there must be something that really made her get attracted to her. Her characters, her conduct, her God, her worship, that she found herself really attracted to this person.
There is this lady who was found attempting suicide. On asking her, "What's wrong?" her answer was, "My dog had an abortion." People think they have problems worth suicide, and that's before they read the story of Naomi, or as she wanted to be known later as Mara. The Lord had turned her sweetness into bitterness, and yet the Lord has a grand plan to turn this bitterness once again into sweetness in this episode of The Microscope. I am Benjamin Habasa, and this is The Microscope, a program where we take a deeper and closer look at biblical events and characters, and in the end realize that these are not mere stories. Welcome to another episode of The Microscope. It is still the lady's perspective. I am here in studios with DOREEN TENDO. You're welcome once again.
Thank you so much.
I am assuring you today, as we look again at this Bible character Ruth, we have a million questions to answer. Most of which have boggled our minds and made us question the character of God, question us our approach to marriage and courting, and many other things in today's microscope. So Ruth and Orpah and their mother-in-law have been in this land where all has gone south. Nothing has gone well for them as far as we know. And then they hear great news. What's the news?
Now, as Ruth is in Moab, she heard that the Lord had visited Israel with bread. I wonder where God was when the famine. By the time I wonder whether God had gone. But anyway, we read in Deuteronomy in the earlier episode that these people had disobeyed, and that is why probably this famine. So she heard that God had visited with bread.
It's powerful. We serve a God who visits. I like that about
It's
him.
good. You know, it gives us hope that, well, things may not go on well, but one time God will visit.
God will visit.
He will visit. So,
and it's even more powerful that he visits every day.
He visits.
He stands at the door.
And knocks. You know. Well, main thing, just like we talked in the last episode, the widows, they feel like they're ignored, but one day God will visit.
Visits.
He visits
and the
them.
best aspect of God's visitation is this. Jesus says to Jerusalem, that Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to you, how often have I wanted to gather your children under my wings like a chicken does to her chicks, but you would not allow me. Then he says to them, The days are coming when the enemy shall surround you and put an embankment around you and encamp you in, because you knew not the time of your visitation. God had visited Jerusalem with salvation, but they never knew.
But this time,
What a horrible thing to do.
but here, at least Naomi had. And you know what?
And responded to that
He
visitation of
responded. That
God.
is the thing that really I liked about Naomi. She responded positively. So she decides to go back to her country. And of course, that is the sad part with these fellow widows, Ruth and Orpah. So she decides to tell them, because that is what shows us that these girls were young and they didn't even have children.
Imagine.
So, you know, when a girl gets married, they say she's off the shelf. So probably now they had to go back on the shelves, so other shoppers to pick them up. So she tells them, you know what, I'll have to go back to my country, and you can also go back to your gods. Yes, you're still young. By the time I give birth, even if I'm to give birth, still these children cannot grow up and get married to you. It's better for you to go back. You know?
I would imagine this was not a one-time conversation.
Of course,
Perhaps
it must
they
have
had
been
enough time to think about it and process it in their heads and make decisions. I will go with her or I will not.
I will not. And it also has something to do with character. How has this person been treating you? You know that if there are those people who treat you badly, and if they tell you, you know what, go back, you're like,
oh, thank heavens.
Thanks be to God.
How often do you see a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law?
Oh. You know, in Luganda, there is a saying that, ukusanga nazaalawo, wasanga malala. Literally meaning...
Make me understand that.
Literally meaning that rather than meeting your mother-in-law, you would rather find her graves. You get?
Right.
Like, that is how bad sometimes relationship between daughters and mothers-in-law is. So it's not that good.
Wow.
But I assume Naomi, according to how we read, how Ruth responds, it shows us that like Naomi was the best mother-in-law.
Wow.
And it triggers something as well. You know, everything about... that is why I like this book, that everything about this story, there is something for us to learn.
Exactly.
How do we treat our mothers-in-law? How do our mothers-in-law treat us?
Let me learn something else. Something about love. They say one of the highest forms of love is to love enough to lose. How do I put this? If I love a girl, the highest form of love that I can show her is if I notice that I am not the best for her, I should be able to let her go. But now we can insist with so much insistence, contrary to Naomi. Naomi knows that she's enjoying the company of these young girls, but she knows that perhaps they would do better remarried and back in their homes. And she loves them enough to release them, go back. She says to them in verse 8 of chapter 1, and Naomi said unto her daughters-in-law, go, return each to her mother's house, and the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with him. In other words, you have been faithful to me and even to your dead husbands. May God be faithful to you, proportionate to your faithfulness. And then it says in verse 9, the Lord grant you that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. I'm loving this, the word rest. It is giving an idea that the rest of a woman is in her husband's home.
Is in her husband's home. But do they all find rest?
Do they all want rest? And when a generation of ladies who want to get a baby as a single mother and they rest at home, I hate men, they always say, and I would rather stay alone. But I think you should say a word to ladies of this generation who are learning to want to find rest above men, above marriage, who think they are way beyond
But
beyond marriage.
But I think it's that they should change that attitude, in fact, because the scriptures don't talk about any kind of being hating men. We know actually God is the initiator of marriage.
Yeah.
From the otherwise would have created only Eve.
Exactly. And when God created men, He didn't say they are dogs.
Dogs. And who says men are dogs?
Ladies,
Of course they do that,
yeah.
but there is one someone who said men are dogs, and then they showed a picture of dogs, like, please show me your father here. So, and saying men are dogs, that is abusing God's creature, because we are created in the image of God, and then we know the men are always the head. So
that would make God a fellow dog, basically, the chief dog.
But of course, it's we need to change our perception about that. And the fact that we're in a sinful world, we should not expect to find perfectionists. We don't expect that. Besides, it also comes to us. If someone treats you in a wrong way, there might be something that triggered it.
Okay.
Yes.
Perhaps you may be the reason for your own treatment.
For your own treatment. Can you just come out of the blue and slap someone?
You must be really evil to do that.
Exactly. Can you find someone sitting there and then you slap them? Either is something wrong on your head,
maybe
or
under the influence of a substance.
Exactly. But if you're normal, can you just, which means there must be something that triggered it. You get. Of course, that does not mean men should not play the part. So please say something about me, because they may think, oh yeah, you said it, so yet they also, despite the fact that sometimes women provoke and do something, at least you're supposed to, they call it emotional maturity. Yes.
To contain, to absorb all that. So dear men, the ladies have said, I speak to you. We should be the rest that Naomi is sending these ladies to find.
Yes.
Sometimes we are total unrest. Like the lady, you make her miss her father's house
There's so many that are married and have never found rest.
In fact, there are many women who get widowed and they become happy.
Are there men who are widows?
Widowers.
How are they called? Widowers?
Yes.
Okay. The men, are they there?
Yeah, they are there.
Okay.
Women also die giving birth. And
they die, but what's the percentage? I think they might be either 2%.
Well,
those that are all really old. Otherwise,
and men, most of the times they get over it quickly and they remarry.
Okay.
That's why they are not as conspicuous as
and according to the research, men who have been married, if they really stay single, they can't live longer.
Oh, wow.
Yes, those that have been married. If you've been single and you're not married, you can live longer compared to a man who has been married for a long time, loses a wife and...
No, you are just using many words to say one sentence from God's mouth. It's not good for man to be alone. You die young.
You die young. Exactly.
Oh. So Naomi says to these daughters-in-law, go and find rest with your husbands, go and marry and live normal lives. And that thing that she mentions of, I think I am even too old, even if I married tonight
I would not
and became pregnant immediately, I would not get a child
you would be able to marry.
That you would be able to marry. I think here she's kind of referencing a story that happens in the book of Genesis with one of the patriarchs of Israel, and that is the man Judah. Judah gives birth to children. I think it is Er and Onan, and then the firstborn before them dies, and then he sends, of course, Er. The Bible says he became wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord killed him. So Onan is left, and
the brother takes over.
So he has to take on the deceased brother's wife to fulfill the duties of a man, so that the children who are born from Onan can be named after the brother who has died. One of the things that God was interested in was keeping the genealogy flowing and flowing from the wife of the deceased brother. And so Onan also refuses to act his part completely by spilling seed and just out of envy.
God kills him as well.
God kills him also. Then there's a very, very, very young child who is not yet at the age to marry. And that child, interestingly, is kept to marry this woman, Tama, when the child is grown. But of course, when the child grows, they still don't give her to the woman. In other words, Naomi giving birth to children to grow and become husbands for these ladies was possible.
Too possible, yeah.
In other words, it was in the picture. If it was possible, it could have been done. As long as those deceased brothers can have their names prolonged through children who may not be biologically theirs, but who are customarily theirs.
Let's put a pause to that. Isn't this those that go in for sugar mummies? Won't they take this as a defense? Will they take this as a defense that, okay, I can love, because by virtue of age, these girls will be younger, way older than the man. This man who has been. So, of course, the boys out there will be like, I think we can have the sugar mummies. It's fine. It's okay.
Well, I don't know which boys you meet out there.
The boys.
But I don't know if you have met a boy who went into a sugar mummy to raise offspring after the deceased sugar mummy's husband. Oh, they don't. After the command of the Lord.
You know those people who just get one verse and then they kind of manipulate it to defend what all the actions that they do.
I know.
Yes, but of course it's clear that it was purpose to have a generation that. Yes. For example, if it's Naomi and then she wanted to have offsprings, then she would still do that.
Exactly. In other words, if the two sons are dead and Naomi is remaining, which means after Naomi dies, then the whole family is forgotten forever and ever.
But there is something I've loved. Actually, before I read the whole book of Ruth, I got to know this verse. Before even getting to know reading the whole story, and that is in Ruth chapter 1:16.
Verse 16.
Yes, okay. Ruth's response.
Oh, when she is told to leave.
When she's told to leave. Because of course with Oprah,
that marriage vow that people use nowadays, making marriage vows. Yes, originally it is a vow of friendship.
A friendship,
not
yes.
Marriage.
Not marriage.
Could you read it for us?
It says, okay, let me open that actually in Ruth, that's chapter 1 verse 16. It says, and then you stopped on the wept, and she said, look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people. Of course, she was telling Ruth, Naomi was talking to Ruth, to her people and to her gods.
Okay.
Return after your sister-in-law, telling Ruth to return. But Ruth said, I'll even read this when I'm looking at the viewers. Entreat me not to leave you, or to turn back from following after you. For wherever you go, I will go. And wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Remember, she even didn't know where
they are going.
Where they were going. She has never been there. Your people shall be my people. Did she have relatives? She had relatives.
Yeah, she had a mother and a father.
Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more so. And if anything but death parts, you and me.
She has concluded with a vow, only death shall separate us. Now,
but are these people, you say it is not a marriage vow, but isn't it? It sounds more like
even
a marriage
still
vow.
Death which should separate friends. Like, friends shouldn't be separated because I lent you money and you didn't pay back.
But you know there are two things that separate friendship. You know that?
Okay.
I
have rarely separated from friends.
It's usually money or a relationship. Like if it's either a guy, for example, if you have your friend and it's either money or women.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting. There is
But
some Hebrew texts, there is this ancient writings, it's called a compilation, it's called the Targum. It's another rendering of the Old Testament. It puts this vow of Ruth in a poetic format and interposes some words.
Actually, even in my Bible version, it wrote it as a poem. You know, like the way they write poems.
So it's not just a verse.
It's not just a verse, but it's a poem.
Wow. Now listen to the poem as the Targum renders it. It says, "And Ruth said, entreat me not to leave thee, for I desire to become a proselyte," that is a convert. And Naomi said, "We are commanded to keep the Sabbath and other holy days, and on it not to travel more than 2,000 cubits. And Ruth said, whither thou goest, I will go. And Naomi said, we are commanded not to lodge with the Gentiles. And Ruth answered, no, where thou lodgest, I will lodge. And Naomi said, we are commanded to observe the 113 precepts. Ruth answered, what thy people observe, that will I observe. And if they had been as if they had been my people of old. And Naomi said, we are commanded not to worship with any strange worship. Ruth answered, thy God shall be my God. Naomi said, we have 4 kinds of capital punishment for criminals: stoning, burning, beheading, and hanging. And Ruth answered, in whatsoever manner thou diest, I will die. Naomi said, let me finish the poem. Okay. Naomi said, we have a house of burial. Ruth answered, and there will I be buried.
Wow, that is actually a dialogue. It's an
actual dialogue. In other words, Ruth wasn't, perhaps according to this poem, was not just speaking in monologue, just saying words as Naomi listened. Naomi was actively trying to tell Ruth, please don't follow me.
Don't follow me.
Go back and find peace. I love you enough to want you to go and find peace without me. Ruth insisted.
Okay, you know, each time I read some of these words, I always do the beginning. You always think backwards. That Naomi, the fact by the time Ruth says these words, there is a way Naomi was treating them. There must be a way Naomi was worshipping her God.
That made her God attractive.
That made her God attractive. There must be something that really made her get attracted to her. Her characters, her conduct, her God, her worship, that she found herself really attracted to this person. To the extent that her saying, you know what, I'll live with your people, because she had a family, right? And then she needed to get married, but her saying, you know what, your people shall be my people.
I can say bye-bye to marriage forever for your sake.
Did she even have any idea of who her people were? She did.
She did not.
Whether there were some kind of monsters or what, she didn't mind about that. So that shows us how good Naomi treated.
Must have been.
Yes.
In fact, I see the influence also powerful, that even the Oprah who was undecided at first also follows. We see that.
And she wept.
She wept when she had to return back. She fast forwarded until they reached, I think, the borders of Judah. When they're about to enter, Oprah, as if she thought about it again, and was like, but man.
But she wouldn't have wept. She was like, oh my God, thanks.
These were two very tough options. Like the proverb or the analog that one day President Museveni gave of the hyena which ate a hot stone which had been burnt in a fire but then coated with fat, and then it had been deceived that it is meat. So it wondered, can I swallow it? It is too hot, it is fire. Can I spit it? It is meat. So there were 2 tough options of either I leave this very sweet woman or I forsake all prospects of marriage and my old life. And finally she chose the old. the old life.
So
Hang on.
this becomes a lesson to the viewers that how do we treat the people that we stay with? How do we show them our God? Will they one time stand and say, yes, I will follow your God?
Wow.
This is a TMI, as per se.
Basically.
The way we conduct ourselves, the way we treat those people.
101, the basic evangelism.
This is the best. So the way we conduct ourselves is just enough for people to follow us and believe in the God that we serve.
Wow.
Yes, so let us ponder about it day and night in all the activities that we do, at our workplaces, wherever we go.
Our family members to begin with. Can they say, you know what? Wow. I'll go to your church. Amen. This Elimelech and his family, it seems when they lived in Bethlehem, they were celebrities. Like they were well known.
Sure.
And when they left for Moab, it must have made news. Oops! Elimelech, the big time Christian, the one who is enthusiastic about God being our king, has finally forsaken and gone to live in Moab. What on earth?
Like what on earth?
And then after these 10 years or so,
they come back.
They see a procession coming back.
Then there's also something I also wanted to, that when Ruth tells Naomi that I'll go with, it gave Naomi some hope.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because remember, she had left, the time she left for Moab, she had gone with 3 people. There were 4 of them. Now just imagine she was coming back alone. She was coming back alone. But at least the fact that she had
one person on her
one person and the daughter-in-law, at least that was a sign of hope. To show that, okay, at least I'm not going alone. I'm not going to stay alone. There is someone I'm going back with.
Wow. I get some hope even more evangelistically. Now that friend of yours who strayed to Moab, one day will return.
One day we return.
As Jesus says to Peter, when thou art converted, strengthen the brethren. And this person has come from Moab, who has seen what Moab has to offer. When they come back to Bethlehem, trust me, they'll be the best version you have seen yet.
Yes.
And of what happens when they return to Bethlehem, it is even the sweeter part after the break. Okay.
Era atwagala nga tuli balamu naffe tusobole okumuweereza obulungi.
Okimanyi nti abasiika panyono kutto abamu tebamuliwa. Bwetyo womusiikisa ekituufu bw'omala omusiikisa olina muliwa. Ebyo bye bireeta kansa.
Gasingira ddala ku gali abantu amata ge bamanya ag'ente. Naye ate kuba ag'ente galina nabyo ebirisa byabo. Naye ate gajja ne side effects.
N'ebirala bingi tobusubwa ku program effumbiro nga tukuleetera abafumbi ab'enjawulo nga batulaga engeri gye tuyinza okuteekateekamu emmere yaffe. Buli lwa Sande essaawa 5 wano ku 3 ABN TV. Nange omwanjuzi wo Nantume Nora.
Oh, the viewers, I welcome you back from that short break. And we're still talking about the book of Ruth. And where we stopped is when Naomi has gone back But by the time we went for the break, at least we had some hope that Naomi had not gone back alone. And this gives us some hope that surely the Lord does not forget his people. There was hope for Naomi. By the time when he left Israel, Bethlehem, there were 3. Him, there were 4 actually. Her, the husband, and the 2 sons. They passed on, unfortunately. But the hope she has is, despite the fact that they died, she came back with a daughter-in-law. And just like you said, it's better than nothing. That is great hope. And probably whoever she will get married to can still give birth to, can still make the family, the generation of the family go on. You see. And just like you said, she must have been, the family must have been celebrities. Because when they go back to their land, everyone welcomes. They were so happy. They really welcomed her.
It says in verse 19 that 2 went until they came to Bethlehem. And it came to pass when they were come to Bethlehem, and all the city was moved about them. And they said, "Is this Naomi? Are you Naomi?"
Yes, is that
and
you?
And she said unto them,
I imagine they might have touched her. Are you the one? Is
you
that
have
you?
cut weight.
You know.
What's happening?
Was everything okay?
And she has no room for pretense. When the situations hit you, you lose all your powers to pretend.
You can't.
Even when you eat grass. It says, "Call me not Naomi, call me Mara. For the Almighty hath dealt very bitterly
on me."
with me."
She was sweetness, and Mara realized now that's bitterness. Just imagine, from sweetness to bitterness.
It's a complete 180-degree turn.
Wait, when I read this, I thought about it. Naomi was this prayerful person. Why did she lose hope that fast?
Prayerful people don't get depression.
Oh, yeah. That is what exactly I wanted you to bring out. That, yeah, we pray, but sometimes...
Life happens. It
does.
Jesus says, my soul is troubled to death. Of course, for him, his problem was worse, like carrying the sins of the whole world.
The whole world, yes.
But Paul says, I have around me fears of all the churches. I mean, we can have good fears and bad fears. There are fears which come from our own sins, but there are also fears which come because we are living in a world of sin.
A world of sin, yes.
And so, by the way, this is so serious, by the way. Many times, those of us with whom God has dealt bountifully, who have less problems, let me put it that way, we have this syndrome,
challenges,
of looking at those who are dealing with more than we're dealing with, and when we see them, I mean, cast down and stressed, we'll be like, "You're not prayerful enough. How dare you worry? How dare you go to the bank and get a loan?"
You would have prayed. Maybe you're not praying enough.
I keep calling it the friends of Job syndrome. But she's from sweetness to bitterness.
Sweetness to bitterness.
Not on her own account. It can happen to me.
But anyway, it was too much. You can't really blame her. It was
so much.
Because just like the early programs you talked about it, that she suffered the most.
Oh yes. And I even find her words close to those of Job. As we said, of all women, she has suffered the most, as Job has suffered the most of men. When she says in verse 21, Ruth 1, "I went out full, and the Lord hath brought me home again empty." Almost the words of Job where he says, "I came empty and shall go back empty. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be his name." Well, very close parallels between Naomi and Job. But
at least she didn't come back anyway, because of course she considers the children and the husband.
Oh, yes.
Because
those are what she went away with.
That was she. Yes. Probably she expected all the people in Bethlehem expected her to come back with grandchildren.
No.
You know, the family has grown
with a huge herds of cows and
herds
everything.
of cows. Okay, even if they didn't have herds of cows, but at least grandchildren, they've married, that the son's married, so happy family. Does it have to? Do you think it has? Does it have anything to do with where she had gone?
Oh wow! No, that's interesting because we notice that when she comes back, verse 22 says they're in the season of barley harvest.
Harvest, yes.
Now, Israel had two major grains, barley and wheat. And the barley harvest always came after that of wheat. And when they're in the harvest, which means they planted, in other words, she had heard that God has visited them with bread, but now when she comes, they are just harvesting. Which would imply, to a greater extent, they had already been harvested before, like this may be the second season or with other seasons. In other words, she comes the odd man out. She comes the only famished person. She comes to people who have plenty. And we don't have any records, perhaps if they're in the background, of any other person who died because of this famine.
By the way,
in Israel.
it's not mentioned anywhere. That someone died because of the famine.
So perhaps fleeing the house of bread to go to the Moabites
was not the right.
As I said, we are not here to defend her. I mean, we love her. We love you, Naomi. But we can spot out the mistakes that they made.
But it's, of course, we see when we get to the middle of this story, there is something that God is driving us to.
Exactly.
You get?
Yes,
there is something God, it's all part of God's plan to bring us to something. It's all part of the process. God is using Naomi, whatever is happening. But of course, we Christians should not use that you know what, God, I'm also in the process of something is coming. You should not use that as an excuse. These are
not just stories that God gives us to look into these people's personal lives, but we are to look into them and look into ours. And draw parallels and see how their lives can guide our own lives. Both
in
the
the
good
decision
and the bad decisions.
and even the decisions that we
make. The good and the bad, both of them know what to shun and what to embrace. Introduce us to Boaz.
So now,
and tell me why he was single.
By the way, why was even Boaz? Before we get to Boaz, now this is like the beginning. You know, like when you're watching a movie and there is that part where finally, you know, you already know the film actors. Okay. And you know now when the film actors are almost meeting each other.
Oh, so the staff from this country is meeting the staff from this
meeting from either probably at the airport or something, getting, so that becomes the best part of the story. Okay, Boaz. So now when we get to, so because when we reached, remember it was a time, Naomi had not been there. They didn't have any garden, but it was harvest time. And they had to look for what to eat. But in the good thing in Bethlehem, they used to have what is called as gleaning. Okay. And when we go to Leviticus, explaining what gleaning is, that is Leviticus 23, chapter 22. Here it tells that when you reap the harvest of your land,
that is Leviticus
23, chapter 23
verse 22.
Verse 22 it says, when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not wholly reap the corners of your field. When you reap, nor shall you gather any gleaning from your harvest. You shall leave them for the poor. And for the stranger, I am the Lord your God. So now, when they reached, so there was also gleaning in that, in Bethlehem. So Ruth went on to go and gather all that other, what was left in the gardens.
So God is so considerate. He knows there are some people who do not have their own land to dig and harvest.
The Ruth,
the Naomis of the day. And so he gives this law. In fact, he had, the people later added some details which were good, you know, Israelites, and adding laws. That's their thing. When God gives the law, they add another one to substantiate this. So God says, if you are privileged and honored to have a farm, number one, the corners or the edges near the road, don't harvest those fruits or those grains. Leave them for the strangers passing by to pick. And of course also the wild animals. God also cares about the animals. He says, number 2, when you are harvesting and you cut this head of the wheat, you cut this one, then you find you have left this one here. Don't go back for this.
Just leave it.
Leave it for the poor. But they had added this other law, that when you're harvesting and then you're carrying the sheaves of the grains,
And some fall.
and some fall, 2 of them, don't pick them. More than 2, pick them. Like if they are more than 2, it means they have really fallen. But if they are just 2, just leave them.
For the poor, yeah.
Now we find it making more sense a bit later.
Yeah,
when Boaz
later on.
is giving directions.
And so when Ruth goes on to pick this left food from the garden, she actually didn't know it was Boaz's garden.
Talk about a happy accident.
Coincidence. So she goes on. She just woke up. She was a very hardworking woman, actually, because she thought, okay, we need to look for something to eat.
Yeah, someone has got to eat.
Exactly. Otherwise, she would have sat down. She said, I'm in a foreign land, so.
Yeah.
But she went on.
Should have said, Mom, go and do something.
It's you who knows these people. It's your land. But she goes on to look for something.
Wow.
So as she's collecting, and then Boaz comes.
Yeah.
So Boaz asks, you can go on and read. We can read from it directly.
That's
that is a verse.
That's starting from verse 3.
Verse 3, yes.
It says, and she went and came and gleaned in the field after the reapers, and her harp, KJV says harp, which means and her luck. She was lucky that she was gleaning. It says her harp was to light on the part of the field belonging unto Boaz, who was of the kindred, or who was the near relative of the Elimelech. I love verse 4. Boaz was a great man. And the prophet Boaz came from Bethlehem and said to the reapers, the Lord be with you. And they answered, the Lord bless thee. I have rarely seen this employee relationship. Where the employer comes and sees the employees and says to them, the Lord be with you, and they reply, yes, boss, the Lord bless you. Boss, by the time they bless
the employer.
Hey. In other words, Boaz is not a man who came to impress Ruth. You know, the Bible says the Bible, I mean, calls us to be gentle, as one preacher has put it, and for us, we want to be gentlemen. Gentlemen. We think the gentleness of the Bible is to carry ladies' bags and be open doors for them, like to impress the public in the streets. But Boaz is a man who is gentle from his heart, even the lowest of the people. He's gentle, and so when his gentleness exudes and leaks upon Ruth, and
it's not a surprise.
It's not a surprise. It's his true nature. I think Ruth must have seen it and said, that guy.
Getting back, there's a question you asked earlier. Why was Boaz still single?
Help me. Because Boaz, he's a near relative, or to put it that way, perhaps a brother at most of Elimelech, the father-in-law of this girl. In other words, he's an age mate. He could literally be a father. And the man is rich. He does not say that I want to marry when I get enough money. He's not lacking in dowry.
But still single?
Doesn't Jesus say in Matthew 19, some people are eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom? Perhaps Elimelech is that.
Is that?
Oh. Okay. Now here is something very sobering, to me at least. Many of us, when they ask us, why do you want to marry? The reason we have is because the Bible says we can marry. Or to have children. We don't have noble reasons behind it. We marry because society marries.
But actually, the majority will say to have children.
To have children.
That's the first thing.
Exactly.
And because they know having children out of marriage is not is condemned, so they're like, I want to have children.
Exactly. And then, who to marry? Many times, of course, we have our bucket lists. I want her looking like this, when she studied like this, speaks like this, sings like this.
At least with PTO, please turn over.
Okay. But yet the ideal is, I will marry whom the Lord shows me to marry. I want to assume on Boaz's behalf and assume the very best of him that Boaz has not yet married because he had not yet seen a lady worth marrying from what the Lord was impressing upon his mind. In fact, as I was reading, I really love reading from the historian Josephus. He says, the famine was caused by the iniquity of Eli and his sons. And the famine ended because of the prayers of Boaz. In other words, from Hebrew tradition, Boaz is one of the noble spiritual men of the past, one who prayed like Elijah and food returned to Israel. His connection with God was so strong that he did not just bump into things and marry. God was reserving him for the noble marriage that would affect humanity.
And then also that shows how Boaz was waiting for God's timing. So God's timing is the right timing.
It can take you up to 8 years.
It can
when
take
you're
you up
still
to
single
8
lady.
years. Though, you know, some of these, you know, there's so many people who use these Bible characters in defense for themselves. They say, yeah, they try to shun away, they fail to take a step in either praying or they say, I'm waiting for God's timing. So
Boaz
that
was
is
praying.
That is what I'm saying. So at least whoever is waiting for God's timing should keep on praying as waiting. Don't just sit back and wait.
Wow.
So
This lady now comes gleaning. And I mean, she was so hardworking that even among the gleaners, she stood out.
she stood
As the
exactly.
best gleaner.
That is what I was going to say. That okay, there were so many gleaners. How come? Because here later on we see Boaz asking, "Who is that lady?"
Exactly.
I was
She's
like,
gleaning exceptionally.
weren't there other people who had been there before? How come she's the only one being noticed?
I don't remember where if it is Martin Luther who says, whatsoever God has put you in charge of to do, do it so exceptionally. If you're a street cleaner, clean the street so well that years after you're dead, people will say, there lived a wonderful street cleaner, and boy did he clean the streets. This lady cleaned with all her might. Is it verse 6?
Yep.
From verse 5, when Boaz
Yes.
said unto his servant that was set over the reapers, or the chief harvester, and says, whose damsel is this? Whose daughter is that?
Who is that?
Like she's, whose daughter? And verse 6, the servant that was set over the reapers answered and said, it is the Moabitish damsel that came back with Naomi out of the country of Moab. And she said, I pray you, let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves. So she came, listen, and she has continued even from the morning until now, that she tarried a little in the house. She went into the house to rest for just a little and resumed gleaning. And Boaz thinks so much in his mind. The first thing that I am made to think about Boaz is this. I am going to echo it again. We are not here to defend Bible characters and portray them as the best of saints. Everyone has a weakness of theirs. Ever since...
But even the weaknesses, those are part of the lessons that we learn.
Yeah, exactly. Ever since Naomi returned from Moab, back, she's now a Mara. The sweet has turned into bitter. Has Boaz visited her? The relative.
Boaz, you know, Boaz had a lot to do. So.
Oh, he was very busy.
And those days there were no phones that he would probably call. Hey, hello, how are you?
He's that busy uncle who takes your CV and says, I'll give you a call and doesn't return to you. And you sit on the street.
So he might have been busy, you know.
And from his words,
and to the extent that he even didn't know, because people in the village were happy.
Knew this girl.
Because if even the workers, the employers, so the employees knew.
They knew
who Ruth was.
Who is not their relative.
Who is not the relative
of Boaz.
In
the next words, I see guilt on the part of Boaz, saying, oh my, I should have done this. I should have taken care of my brother's widow. But a Moabitish girl is doing it better than me. And so he comes out and he compensates for his, for his weakness by doing something more noble.
Then there's also something as the coincidence because I mean Ruth would have gone to any other, because I assume there were so many other rich men there with gardens. So that is still part of God's plan.
Oh, yes.
That's at the right time. The coincidence, Boaz meeting Ruth. We see it was a coincidence, but of course it was all part of God's plan.
Oh, sure.
In Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 11, it says, He has made everything beautiful in its time.
Wow.
Also, He has put eternity in their hearts, except that no one can find out the work that God does from the beginning to end. Yeah. So he talks about timing, that
Like
it's
in God's time everything becomes beautiful.
it just comes beautiful. It just works out, just like that.
This story, the beauty in it is not reliant on the timing of men, but on,
not
but
at
on
all.
God's.
Yes, the fact that he noticed Ruth, and because Boaz was, they were relatives to Naomi, he would have gone to any other
So man's
person.
part is just to stay on track and stay aligned to the plans of God.
To the plans of God.
The timing falls in place as God's part of the contract.
Let them not forget with prayer.
Oh yes. And so Boaz has come, has seen this girl, has been told who this girl is.
This girl is,
He has overcome his guilt of not acting his part, and finally comes and he compensates by saying to the reapers, this girl is a special case. When you're harvesting,
Give her something.
let something fall accidentally. So she will think she is gleaning, while in actual sense,
She
you
has
are only
something to
falling,
take hold.
making things fall. Number two, let her glean until she is tired.
She's tired. Yeah.
Number three,
And she was a hard worker.
now you don't expect her to get tired. Number three, when the official hired workmen are having their lunch breaks and drinking water from the well,
Yeah, you can still.
she can come and be part of the meal time. And in fact, they say that this day she gleaned and gleaned, and at the end of the gleaning, because it was just heads of barley, she beat them out, or she threshed and then winnowed and got a fine grain, a whole ephah. That is a basket. Like a whole basket of real wheat, not wheat in its husks, or real refined wheat. That is a huge harvest.
Huge harvest and hard work. It needs a lot of hard work.
You know, some of us have been farmers, peasants, I can rephrase, and you plant a whole garden, weed, take care, spray, and you don't harvest a basket.
And you don't have.
And this one has harvested a basket from gleaning. Hard work is paying off, but of
And
course,
then Boaz
it
shows
was
us-
sprinkled with favor from God through man.
And Boaz must have been very generous man.
Oh yeah, he must have been from his interaction with workers and the gleaners.
And the gleaners,
This is
yes.
a man after God's heart for this season. And this story is just coming towards its climax. Where, I mean, about how it affects the whole of mankind is about to begin with, to start. And this is the part where the whole story is building
Yes.
to. But our time is up. And in the next episode, we shall have much of this and so much more. Until then, keep your eyes on the microscope.
Thank you.